Welcome back to Beyond the Margins, Inside the Mind, Shaping Modern Finance. I'm your host, Cherise, and today we're stepping into a world that every entrepreneur thinks about eventually, but usually avoids talking about until the very last minute, and that is selling their business. And joining me is someone who lives in that world every day, Brad Scoffin, business intermediary, advisor, and the guiding force behind Advanced Business Brokers. Brad helps owners navigate one of the biggest financial transitions of their lives, and usually long before they even know where to start. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. And I appreciate being here and being able to share a nugget or two. Hopefully it's helpful to somebody.
Absolutely. So happy to have you here. So, you've built a reputation for helping owners get clarity around exit planning. And I love how your firm really leans into education and preparation, not just transactions. So, before we dive into all the big topics, what originally pulled you into the business brokerage and advisory world?
Well, yeah, it's not like, you go to college and you say, yeah, I want to graduate and be a business broker because, excuse me,
Yeah.
our world is relatively new. Uh, Mergers and acquisitions have been around for a long time with larger businesses, but small family-owned businesses typically transition where the son or daughter of someone in the family took over or a key employee took the business. Well, that's changed now in this day and age. The kids either don't want the business or the key employee can't afford the business. And the exits now are going, a lot of them are going to the open market to find a good fit to keep the legacy going and find that transition. So selling on the open market is something that's been around for just a few decades in mainstream.
So, can you walk us through a bit about your journey of how you started the business
Sure.
and
Well,
what
I'll
you
take you all the
focus
way
on?
back. I'll take you all the way back. So I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit. Back in middle school, I used to walk to school. I'd stop at a local drugstore and buy a bag of candy and then actually sell it on campus and make money. And then after that, I got started having my own paper route. Now, paper routes have long gone and kids don't do them anymore. But that's when I started to entrepreneurial. And then I always worked right out of college in financial services of some sort, but always really my own clientele, my own book of business. And before starting into the business brokerage, I was working as a sales rep doing employee benefits. And that position was eliminated. They went from an outside sales force to internal. And that led me to doing some searching of where I wanted to be next. And I met my partner, Larry. He's been doing business appraisals and valuation work for now 30 plus years. So we met about 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago. And then we actually started our business and we're a leap year baby. So we actually formalized the LLC on February 29th of 2016.
Wonderful. I love that. So let's ground listeners in what you do day to day for people who might be thinking about an exit or even just wondering what their business is worth. How would you describe your firm's approach and overall strategy when helping owners prepare for a sale?
Right. It does depend on at what point in time they're approaching us. The best time they can approach us is before they ever want to sell. Unfortunately, we usually get approached with, "Hey, I'm ready. I'm done. I'm tired. I want to have this sold by the end of the week so I can move to Florida and buy my boat." And it's like, it doesn't happen that fast. We can work from both extremes, but unfortunately, if you wait till the very end, I always tell people and joke about it. My job is I get to tell people their baby is ugly. And it's not that I want to offend them. They've done a great job and invested their heart and soul into a business, but they haven't prepared it to be transitioned and owned by somebody else. It's always been run by them. And so the number that they think they're going to get is vastly different than what the market will likely offer them. And I'm telling them and trying to set realistic expectations, hence telling them a lower number than they were hoping to hear. And sometimes it's somewhat just about ego. They want validation for what they have built and done. They want to be told that they did a good thing and they did a great job. So in their mind, they're putting a number. I want $10 million, make me feel good, when their business is worth a fraction of that. But still, 2 or 3 million is not a bad deal. And if that's what it's worth, that's what it's worth. So that being said, our approach, we like to do a lot of education workshops, get people thinking about this earlier, because business owners that think about this from the get-go, even if it's 5, 10 years away, if they run their business, as if it was going to be sold sometime in the near future, they will actually find more time for themselves. They'll make more money and they'll have a more efficient business model that can scale. Doesn't mean they have to scale it. Some people are happy with, where they're at. But if you build it so it's scalable, you can scale, and then it may be a business that you don't have to sell. It may be able to be run, and you just are chairman of the board, as it were.
So, what would you say is the number one priority for getting your business where it is in that position to sell at any time?
Well, and everybody wants to know what their business is worth, and they want to be a simple math formula. What's my multiple? And it doesn't work that way. But the two things that businesses will have an enterprise value, and we'll just call it X. And all lifetime businesses run the same way, doing similar numbers, will be at that same point. And then it's not like you can slap a new coat of paint on it and have it worth more. It's what is your business structured like internally that isn't gonna get discounted down. So it starts at that high point, and then business buyers are looking at, hey, what are the risk factors and what are the future expenses? And then they're discounting that price down. Now, that being said, what can you do to maximize its sellability and for the most price? The two things: clean books, so running it with efficient books, not that you pay zero taxes. You will have show profit, but showing profit's not a bad thing. But having books that don't need to be adjusted at the end, and we can get into that deeper if you want. And then the other thing is actually delegating and getting out of the business as much as possible. You want to make yourself as a business owner less relevant to the day-to-day operations and workload. You could certainly run the business and be the owner and make high-level decisions, but you need to build that team that operates the business. If you're a key in the operations, well, that's a big risk factor for a buyer because as soon as you leave, all your knowledge is gone. And most people, when they want to sell a business, aren't looking to stick around longer. Also, with that, as you grow a business larger, the different types of buyers are buying businesses for different reasons. So a smaller business, a owner operated business is selling to an individual financial buyer that's going to take that owner's job. Okay, that's one thing. But if you're selling to private equity and expecting to get 15, $20 million for your company, private equity isn't looking to buy a job and then insert people in. They're looking to buy it intact. And so the management team, the team that's operating and running the business daily, they expect them to stay. Now, there may be changes down the road, but we have some business owners, two brothers built up a nice little manufacturing coating business. And they said, "Oh yeah, we want to be done at 10 years, and we're 6 years into that plan." It's like, well, okay, do you want to be on the market at that 10-year mark, or do you want to be on the beach? And they said, "Oh yeah, we want to be done and out." It's like, well, as big as they had grown it, and they were key as part of the management team. If private equity, then that was their likely buyer, were to buy them, they would have to work for another 3 to 5 years. So they needed to be sold sooner than later because they were going to have to still work another couple of years until they could replace themselves. So if you
Uh-huh.
build a business where you have a great management team to where you're not needed daily, that makes you more valuable, makes it easier to sell.
Absolutely. So you're in a fascinating part in the market with business owners retiring, new entrepreneurs buying, private equity creeping further into the lower middle market. What are the biggest trends you're seeing right now in the business sale landscape?
Oh, there's so many different trends. So the biggest trends, we'll divide the market into two oversimplified markets: under 10 million and over 10 million. Over 10 million is definitely very competitive, but it's competitive if companies are run very well. And right now we're seeing values actually expand because there's just so much money on the sidelines looking for good investments. Under 10 million, the valuations haven't changed much. Usually, the valuations are somewhere between 2 to 4 times their cash flow, and it's very little expansion above that because there's just too many risk factors. And so the challenges we're seeing there is just financing, getting across the finish line, and a lot of buyers right now, again, to mitigate some of that risk, are asking sellers to finance part of the deal. We don't ever recommend doing seller financing for the deal, but having 10 or 20% financing or some kind of rollover equity makes sense for a buyer because they want that seller engaged in the success. So we're seeing a lot more a lot more structure to the deals, not a lot of just cash at close and go away. I think you're going to need to be involved for some part, whether it's, you know, 6 months to a couple years.
Well, when we had spoke a few weeks ago, you had mentioned something that I thought was interesting, the silver tsunami related to baby boomer business owners. Do you like to talk a bit about what you're seeing with that or where you think that market is going to be going in the next number of years?
Yeah, it's crazy. So the Exit Planning Institute came out with their studies after interviewing business owners, and they say that in the next 10 years, 73% of all privately held businesses will change ownership. The big vast driver of that is the baby boomer generation. 51% of all privately held businesses in the US are owned by a baby boomer. Baby boomers are in their 60s and 70s, and they're now getting to the point where, hey, times have been good lately. I need to really think about retirement. What do I want to do next with my life? Fortunately, most of them still don't plan or have an attack plan for exiting, and they just wait till they just get tired, done, and they're selling for the wrong reasons or a health issue hits them. Uh, and I have people all the time that say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to die at my job." I get it, and that's a exit strategy. Actually a great exit strategy for you, the owner. It stinks for everybody else. It's total chaos for the
Mhm.
family, total chaos for employees, total chaos for clients, total chaos for vendors. So it worked for you because you're no longer here, but it didn't work for
Right.
anybody else. And there's so much wealth
No.
in that transition in the next 10 years. That's 73% of businesses. They say that the value will be 14 of wealth changing hands. And there's just a lot of good, but the only good outcomes come from if you have advanced planning. If you wait till it's thrust upon you, you'll never be happy with the transaction because you'll always have wanted more. If you go through planning, you can understand what's driving value, what you should expect, and then you can look for the best fit. And that's what we really want to focus on with clients is finding that best fit so that the employees are taken care of, the clients are taken care of, the impact in the community is minimal, and you get a fair price. And then you never know where that leads later because maybe you have a great relationship with some of those employees, and you still have a great relationship with them afterwards.
Right. Yeah. I'm curious, do you think that there will be a shortage of buyers for this like 51% of the market that needs to turn hands? Or like, do you see businesses being devalued just because there's not enough
Right.
market
In the last 10
demand
years,
for all these?
yeah, in the last 10 years, it's definitely been a seller's market. There's been more sellers than buyers, and that's helped prop prices up. The market is definitely shifting and will over the next 5 years. And it's not necessarily because there's too much supply and not enough buyers, but the buyers are definitely getting pickier. And so there will be pressure on price if you're not run as well as you should be. And I'm not saying you have to be perfect. You know, life happens, right?
Mm.
But
Yeah.
business owners that haven't, got their processes documented, haven't adopted new technologies, whether it be AI or other things that they need to bring into their fold. They're really stuck in the past. I had a manufacturing company, great little company. They had a niche business, but the problem is all of their books were done once a year at tax time. So they did have no interim statements. Well, that's hard for a buyer to analyze what's going on right now. Oh, about the same as last year. Well, I don't know that until you can send me the tax returns. And then they had nothing. They had done all of these projects, engineering projects. All the spec sheets were on 3 ring binders on the shelves. None of it was in electronic and way to look it up. So it had a lot of challenges from a technology standpoint, and they definitely were not going to get the price they wanted because there was a lot of risk in that and or a lot of work that the next buyer is going to have to do. But as far as it goes, do I think there's going to be a shortage of dollars? No. There is just so much money on the sidelines. There are so many more people coming into, they call it ETA, Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition, looking to, instead of starting a business, why start one? Why not buy one that is already cash flowing, is already making money. I'm not worried that it's going to go under. Now, it's not going to be like I'm going to step into buying a business that's going to pay the owner $500,000 a year, and I'm going to step in and be making 500 a year because no, I have a loan I have to pay off now. Uh,
Right.
but you, but there's plenty of interested people that are looking and being trained on how to purchase a business, and it is a much better path than starting on your own because the one that started on the is startup before you, they've already learned through some of the mistakes. You don't have to necessarily go through all of those. So again, there's plenty of cash. What's going to change though is the market is definitely very stringent on quality, and every business owner I meet, small, medium, and large, all think their business is pretty. There's no risk in their business. They survived 2008. They survived COVID. There's no risk here. Yet, as a buyer, you see all sorts of risk, and that's
Mhm.
reflected in deal
Yeah.
structure and price.
So, would you say standard operating procedures would be one of the key things for a business owner to make sure they get in place, or what would you say would be
Yeah, I mean, having
the
having
priority?
operating procedures and having it documented, and then again, if you've got a sales force, do you have an actual sales process, and does everybody adhere to it, or oh, we all use the process, but we all use it differently? Then it's hard to manage that. So yeah, and just having things documented. More stuff that's in people's head, whether it's a key employee or the owner, that's not a good thing. So standard operating procedures, cross training and having people that can backfill, and then just looking at where you can increase efficiencies. Again, AI has been a great tool. I know a lot of people are fearful of it. I embrace AI. I think it's wonderful. We're actually seeing a shrinking workforce, so we need AI to replace some of those people. But there are tasks that people don't need to be doing anymore. But there are plenty of opportunities for workers still to be put to work and deployed. And so embracing that. So wherever you can find efficiency.
Absolutely. Where do you find that owners are consistently struggling when it comes to selling?
I mean, the biggest struggle is just understanding truly what their value is, because I can run formulas. They can look online and come up with a formula, and they get a number in their head. The price and the value are two different things. Value is a calculation. Price is what somebody's willing to pay for your business. And
Right.
so sometimes it's hard for them to understand because the emotional logic that they have for where value comes from, because it has been their baby. It's been their life. They've missed a lot of family opportunities because of that. And so that's probably the seller's biggest struggle is being open-minded to price and deal structure at levels that they think are way too low, but really when you look at it from a third party perspective, are fair based upon what somebody's buying and getting. The other thing that does get in the way of sellers is emotional. Again, it's that readiness. What are you going to do next? We get that all the time. And we do ask that and try to help coach that, because my job is not only just being a salesperson and an analyst and a coach and a cheerleader, but is also a therapist, and
Okay.
working with them through those emotional times. If you don't know what you're going to do next, you will self-sabotage your deal and it'll blow up or go sideways without you really knowing why. But if your purpose in life has always been going to the factory or going into the office or doing something, do you know what you want to do in retirement? Or what's the next chapter? It doesn't have to be retirement, but if you don't know what you're going to do or where you're going to go, you will all of a sudden psychologically start putting the brakes on and you don't even know it. And we see that all the time. And then that leads to buyer fatigue because the buyer gets strung along too long. And at some point, they just decide to get off the merry-go-round. And that's another thing that happens to sellers is if the process takes longer than they want it to take, they get fatigued and want to get off the merry-go-round. And again, all too often in this market, we're seeing businesses close that don't have to, but it's just easier. Again, the process, it doesn't happen in 30 days. It's 6 months to 18 months, depending on size, scope, sure, type of buyer you're looking at and working with. So it's not going to happen in 30 days.
My husband and I just went through a transition selling our trades business, so I can totally relate to that fatigue of
Well, and that's
Just wanting the process to go smoothly and quickly. So,
yeah, and that's one thing that people, it's hard to put that value dollar number on, but that's the value a business broker does bring to the table. And again, I've known plenty of people that have done it on their own and done it successfully, and I applaud them. The job of a business owner is to keep the business running efficiently and growing all the way through that closing date. And if you're focused on a large deal in M&A and getting deep in due diligence and having to do meetings and reports, it take you away from the business, and then the business starts to level off or even go down because you're just not engaged in the business full time because it's taking your time away. That trailing 12 months to a buyer, they use it, and that puts fear in their hearts, and so they have to mitigate
mhm,
that risk, and it's usually done through some kind of renegotiation towards close, and it's not because they're trying to lowball. They're just, if the business is starting to tail off, they've got to protect themselves, and that usually comes in a way of a lower price or some kind of structured deal, and that doesn't make the seller feel good. But
right.
so the seller's job should be to run the business. The broker's job is to run the process of negotiations, due diligence, and get to closing. Sellers got to be involved in that to somewhat because they know a lot of information, but they need to still focus first and foremost on the business.
100%. Yeah, I agree. So you mentioned incorporating some AI and technology into your business. What efficiency strategies have worked best for you recently? What are you most focused on improving this year in the business?
Yeah, we've got some folks working in the lead generation area on AI, and the AI agents learning from what's working, what's not, and improving that. Uh, so that's in its infancy, but it's something that we're using. We use AI to streamline our process for putting marketing materials together because it is a template. And we do, we've gotten great compliments as part of what we put together, but the the process, if it took you 10 man hours just to take all these documents and put them in this 40 to 50 page package, well, I can use AI to do that first draft in 10 minutes and then have a human look at it, make corrections because we still have to correct some verbiage and some layout, but that has definitely saved us a ton of time. And then we're looking at some other processes in our email response and things like that. Again, it's stuff where it's automated because I have a virtual assistant, so she just does this, but she doesn't even need to do the first round because it's not requiring any kind of real decision. It's just answering and plugging some data into the CRM. That stuff is getting automated. So we're working on it. We're late to the game as far as, AI, but we're earlier than most in my industry. My industry is full of old people. The people who are well, the challenge of being a business broker is that there's to start up and do it. There's no barrier to entry, but there's huge barriers to success because my sales cycle is 2 to 4 years. So even if I started this business and had two great clients to sign up, I may not actually make a living off of them till 12 months down the road. So you starve your first year building up your pipeline, starve left your second year, and then you make a living by getting started. And so the people that typically are brokers are people that have been business owners in the past. They sold their business, they still want to give back and do something, or maybe they were a banker for a number of years, so this is a second career for them in their 50s and 60s. But yeah, it's not for the young at heart. However, it's funny because then you go into the world of large financial deals in investment banking, and it seems like they're all in their 20s. But it's because it's a different model and they're paid, a salary or something in a different way.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it's a commission-based kind of world.
Right, absolutely. If you could wave a magic wand and solve one major challenge for businesses looking to sell, what would that be?
Wow, unfold. If I can say that I can solve two things. I want business owners to really educate themselves, whether they're startup, middle cycle, or towards the end, on their finances. Most business owners uh, do something very well, but it's not financial management. And so if you have to hire or go outsource to or hire a CFO or just understand how your finances work and impact the business and how you can use your P&L as a tool instead of the necessary evil to do your taxes, that would go light years to helping them understand what's driving value and what they would look at it. But the other side of it really is finding the right people and putting them in the right places. Because most entrepreneurs, when we first start, whether you're a solopreneur or you've got a small company, you wear 16 hats. Well, you get so used to wearing those hats that it's hard to give them up. And that's the only place that you can truly, leverage and build something of worth is having a team and giving up some of that responsibility. Still you can manage the people and give them direction, but letting them do it. So building up a team and delegating and getting rid of as many hats as you can. So if I could get them to, have a true management team and get out of their own way and all that, the business would go to the moon. And that's why there's a lot of interest in buying some of these companies run well enough, but they're not yet scalable. And then you put some business acumen behind them, and you can take a $3 million company to 10 million in less than 5 years.
So, what other advice would you give to business owners who want to improve the value of their business, whether they're planning to sell in the next 5 years or 15 to 20 years from now?
Yeah, I would start building a team. There are plenty of advisors that do exit planning and can give them an assessment. But I would go out and get an assessment of what your company's valued at now and why, and its sellability. There's all sorts of different things. We have them as well as to give you kind of a scorecard of where you're behind and where there's areas for improvement. Because and it's things that may not even come up to you because business is good and you're just surviving or how do you meet orders, but do you have customer concentration issues? Is one customer too much a part of a business? It doesn't mean cut that customer off. It means grow the other ones so that this customer's not
Hmm.
50% of your business. So those are the kinds of things that we see that are driving value down. Again, if you've got a bottleneck with vendors, a bottleneck with employees, if you have one key function that only one person in your whole team can do, when that person's gone on vacation or sick, God forbid that one key person is you, the owner. Um, it
Right.
does.
Yeah.
Can you take a 3 month vacation and come back and the business is running smoothly, or you come back from a 3 day weekend and you're buried for the next week? If you can take a 3 month vacation, your business is actually running very well. Those are the kinds of things that drive value. And then, the rest just come down to efficiencies and knowing, where you're efficient and not efficient. Benchmark yourself against your industry. Does your industry, typically have a certain, gross margin or a certain net profit? And are you higher or lower? Because every business owner I ever meet all thinks they're above average. When you look at them, they're just part of the average, or some of them are way below average. But they they don't see themselves that way because again they haven't ever looked at it in relation to the others in their industry.
Right. So learn to compare yourself to the benchmark so that you know where you're sitting.
Yeah, and again, there's a lot of tools out there and databases that you can look at just to give yourself a picture, and then from that you can create a game plan. Because to give you a 2 word answer that's relevant to everybody, everybody's business is different and has different areas that they can make an impact in. So it's really hard to say a catch all. But there's a great book out there that I love. It's an easy read. The book is Built to Sell. It's uh, it's like a 100-page paperback book that talks about 8 different key value drivers in a business. It's written in a fictional story format, so it's an easy read. You're not reading like technical jargon and all that. You're actually reading the journey of a business owner. It's fictional, but it's very on point.
Very good. So for our readers, you said that was Built to Sell?
Built to Sell by John, and the last name
Built to
is
Sell.
Warlow, but it's spelled Warrillo, Warri.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for sharing that. And where's the best place for our listeners or people to connect with you when they might have questions?
Yeah, if anybody wants to ever just reach out to pick my brain, I'm always happy to jump on a call. You can find me on LinkedIn or you can reach out through our website. Fascinating story. I just recently got nicknamed from a leadership conference as Bowtie Brad. And one of the guys that was there said, hey, you know what? That website's available. If you don't register it, I'm gonna come back and charge you. So sure enough, I did. So
Right.
bowtiebrad.com, it then links you to our actual website. Yeah.
I love
Bowtiebrad.com.
it. Perfect. That's great. Brad, thank you so much for joining me today on Beyond the Margins. Your insights have been educating, and I think it's a good thing for all of us as business owners to keep our eyes on the vision of where we're going and what we need to do to eventually transition into either retirement or a different option. So thank you for sharing.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you for having me, and have yourself a blessed week. Looking forward to, what this next year has to offer all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe and help others to get insights about building and selling amazing companies.